following presentation has been approved for mature audiences only.
A wise individual once said, "We're all the protagonists of our own story." And another once said, "It's all a matter of perspective." I don't know who said all these things, and I'm not even going to bother looking it up. But I should also add that we're also the antagonist of someone else's story, and the supporting cast of everyone else's. Yeah, that feels inspiring.
Okay, so here's what I originally wanted to do for this video. I wanted to save this for Arcade Kitten's birthday, you know, make it something special. And then this happened. Yeah. So in my previous theory video, I theorized that each of Arcade Kitten's games were part of a single timeline. And of the 12 games, I was only able to put 6, maybe 7 of those games into a cohesive timeline of universes. Of course, the timeline might not even be a straight line. Maybe we're looking at an Ocarina of Time situation, only more complicated. Arcade Kitten even watched my video, but did not confirm or deny anything that I theorized. Not to mention that no one has tried to dispute my claims. So far so good, I suppose. Also, in my previous video, I ended it with a pretty bold claim. Let's just say that Twyla might not be as big of a villain as we've been led to believe.
What the fuck?
Twyla be the hero? Well, in Here for Sweethearts maybe she is, but in Cemetery Mary? Impossible! We see how evil she can be in that game. That's what it looks like on the surface, and for a while, that's what I thought too. Until Blackout Hospital came out. Man, Blackout Hospital really is the game changer. With that said though, everything that I can present in this video is only a theory. With how Arcade Kitten writes her stories and only 12 games with varying lengths, getting concrete answers is going to be tricky. Like, who are Necrotary's parents? How many entities rule over Death's world? Are we going to get more Dearlington what the fuck faces? And most importantly,
How did I get here?
here's my bold theory. Not only is Twyla an heroic figure, but I think she may be in a similar situation to Reginald, and she's trying to stop him at every turn. In other words, she's aware of her past lives, and she's actively trying to protect Mary. And honestly, I think it would make her a much more interesting character should this prediction hold true. At the same time, Arcade Kitten could be watching this, smiling ear to ear, as I make a prediction that is nowhere close to what she has in mind for her future games. Screw it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay, so is it possible for Twyla to be aware of her past lives? That's not going to be an easy answer. I mean, yeah, Reginald does have awareness, and it's all but outright stated that Rune has awareness, if my previous points about the picture of Ingram is any indication. I'm calling this ability awareness because it's basically what it is, being aware of your past lives.
Oh, I didn't think you should ask about any of that silly stuff. After all, if you do, you may wind up in a position similar to mine.
Not much of a stretch considering what happens in these games. Maybe Rune gets his awareness from Death's world considering he's familiar with the place in contrast to Reginald, who gets his from the Wishmaker. It's also worth pointing out that Angel is completely unfazed by their surroundings. In fact, they seem to be doing a favor for this pregnancy goddess, whoever the fuck she is. Does that mean Angel has awareness? What I'm trying to say is, there are a variety of noise revs who have different powers. Like Ollie can talk to ghosts in Here for Sweethearts, for instance. Since 2 people have awareness, is it really that much of a stretch to assume that more people could have awareness? You know, maybe it's a superpower. given the fact that so very little lore details are given considering powers at this time, there's not a lot we can work with, and that's a problem. Okay, let's just roll with it and say there's a possibility that Twyla could have awareness. What does this mean for her story, and why am I claiming that this makes Twyla an heroic figure? Well, it would explain a lot of her actions throughout the series. Let's start with My Wishmaker and Here for Sweethearts. Notice how in these two games, Twyla is portrayed much more sympathetically than how she's normally presented as. In comparison to Cemetery Mary, that is. In Here for Sweethearts, Nova is the real villain, and Twyla is actually doing the Academy a favor by trying to kill them. Sure, she's heartless and selfish. I mean girl bossy. But she's a much lesser evil than our Path of Spire protagonist. You know, considering their species feeds off happiness. And in the Wishmaker prologue, Twyla is considered to be part of the friend group running from Reginald. But why is she here? Wouldn't someone like Theo, Zap, or even Mitzi be here instead? Why would Arcade Kitten show us that Twyla is part of this friend group? Is it a fan service moment? Maybe not. Let's take a look at the timeline for a second. Last time I claimed that these two games were the first in the timeline, and whichever order you wanted to put them in was entirely up to you. Well, let's put that to the test. Let's say that Here for Sweethearts comes first, either by being in a separate or the same universe as Wishmaker. It would make sense. Reginald doesn't have the Wishmaker for the entire time that we see him, presumably. And he hasn't lost his marbles yet. In this game, Twyla is pinning the dead student's death on Reginald. Why is she doing this even after Reginald was cleared? Well, presumably she's doing it because the headmistress told her to, considering the hints that the headmistress is a clairvoyant. I mean, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff that the headmistress does in this game, like letting two Path of Spires into the academy, or not punishing Vessels or Groven.
No matter what it is I've done, she always lets me off scot-free.
You always thought that the acceptance process for Aether West was random. If there is a formula, no one knows what it is yet.
It is random. At least it's supposed to be. Nowadays, even I start to doubt it.
Not a lot to go off of, sure. But if Wishmaker comes first in the timeline, that's where things get intriguing. If Wishmaker comes first, then Twyla framing Reginald for murder means that she's doing it not just because the headmistress told her to, but she's also doing it to get back at Reginald for killing her in her previous life.
And when I mentioned the whole crochet thing to her one day, she told me that Gunter knew how to do it and I should just go ask him for help. That's why I don't understand she thinks I was the one who did the murder. Because I was in Gunter's room, failing to make a sweater the night that it happened. And he can confirm that if you ask him.
Also in Here for Sweethearts, there's this scene in the intermission chapter.
Well, you didn't tell me she was a student here. Of course it is. You're the reason why I'm here. It's fine. I'm leaving. What's going on here, headmistress?
I'm going to save us the time and tell you this. The headmistress is talking to Reginald, possibly with the Wishmaker. The she that's being talked about here has to be Twyla. It can't possibly be Mitzi because Reginald already has made a big fuss about them and only gets mildly annoyed by Mitzi, but Twyla framing Reginald for murder seems to be a fairly recent thing and would warrant a conversation like this one. Something odd to note during Mary's chapter of Here for Sweethearts is what happens if you pick this dialogue choice.
Yes, I'm taking Twyla. But wait, huh? Really? Twyla told me that she... Well, speculatively, why are you suddenly appearing?
However, she doesn't even enter the room for the correct choice. It's almost like she was eavesdropping and only entered the room because she heard Mary shouting. It seems like Twyla is protective of Mary despite what she says about her. Now you may be saying, but what about Cemetery Mary? Twyla is clearly evil in that game. Well, let's take a look at that. And speaking of Mary, let's talk about her relationship with Twyla. I want to bring to light Twyla's behavior towards Mary in this game. It's a bit weird that Arcade Kitten would make Twyla a bad guy when 3 of her 4 appearances didn't paint her in this light. It's stated in this game by Twyla that she doesn't care about Mary. But is that even true? So part of me wondered if she was just trying to keep me busy. That doesn't make sense. So if she really wanted to sneak around, then she wouldn't have invited me in the first place. So why did she invite me? There are numerous times when Twyla has every opportunity to kill Mary. In Twyla's good ending, she wins. Reginald is dead, and the Owl Mafia is still alive and kicking. Twyla has no reason to keep Mary alive at this point. In Twyla's bad ending, she hits Kroven with a sledgehammer and sets fire to the cabin. At no point does she go after Mary. While setting the cabin on fire would make it sound contradictory, I think Twyla knew that Kroven would sacrifice himself to save Mary. Twyla didn't even need to set fire to the cabin. She could have killed them both with the sledgehammer, then set the cabin on fire, but doesn't. Even when Mary is outside of the cabin, Twyla doesn't even bother killing her. With Kroven dead, Twyla has basically won the gang war. But with the context of Twyla having awareness, she doesn't want to kill Mary. Even during the True Path when Mary meets Twyla in the prison facility, Twyla just lets her leave instead of just killing her. You don't have to be involved in any of this. Why don't I help you out of this? You don't have to be here. I'll show you the way out. And there are more parts of the game that can be recontextualized with Twyla's awareness. Towards the end of Twyla's story, she invites Mary over for a dinner party with other members of her Mafia family. She has no reason to do this, and it's not like you have the option of saying no. Mary just goes along with it. And in the immortal words of Billy Mays, I'm not done yet. Last time I mentioned that Twyla's good route is the only time where Twyla doesn't yell at Mary. Let me elaborate on that. During Kroven and Reggie's routes, Twyla shows up for a confrontation scene with Mary where she yells at her. If you end up getting the bad route for Twyla, you are treated to Kroven confronting Mary, and a few scenes later, a confrontation scene with Twyla. But what happens on Twyla's good route? No confrontation scene. Nothing from Reggie or Kroven. Interesting design choice, isn't it? Twyla's route is even the easiest to reach a good ending. You just have to grow Mary as a character and, not be a fucking idiot. In fact, none of the other 2 routes even give Mary an opportunity to grow as a character.
When I was asleep, that's when I talked to Ed. That's how I knew about the antifreeze, remember? So maybe if I sleep on their graves, like I did Ed, maybe I'll talk to them too, and they can tell me what happened.
Now you may be asking, well, if Twyla is protecting Mary from Reginald, why continue to be part of a mafia? I don't really have a good answer for this. But the most likely one is that since she was born into a mafia life, she's just taking the piss with it and using the mafia as a means to stop Reginald. Now, let's talk about Blackout Hospital. Or rather, let's talk about her cameo in Blackout Hospital. Okay, so I'm not an expert on symbolism and all that, so I don't know if that's the kind of thing that Arcade Kitten likes to put into her games. So just know that I don't put a lot of stock into believing this next part. I only bring it up because it's something I noticed while I was writing this video. In the true ending for Blackout Hospital, look at the choice of cameos. We have the Trouble Trio, the Misfits, Nova, Angel, and Twyla. You know who I don't see? Mary's parents. Shouldn't they have come to see her if she was cured? We don't know the time gap between Rune breaking the spell card and Vasilis walking into the hospital, so we don't know when they received word that Mary was getting better. That's not the part I want to focus on, though. What I want to focus on is the meaning behind each cameo choice. Because if game theory taught me one thing, is to question every design choice. Let's get the obvious parts out of the way. The Trouble Trio represent Rune, since his son Rio is part of the friend group and is there to see him. The Misfits represent Vasilis, since, Krovan wants to see Vasilis. Then there's Nova, a path aspire who feeds off of heartbreak and misery. Now, guess what happens in the bad ending? Reggie betrays you. Now, I don't think that Nova represents Reggie himself, but they are more symbolic of the bad ending. Angel represents the secret ending. Even though she's not needed to get the secret ending, she has a connection to Death's World, which has some unspoken connection to the Wishmaker considering it possesses Vasilis. When you get to the second building and try to enter her room while in a party, she says this to you.
Please, come back when you're alone.
How do you get the secret ending? You kill the only person who tried to be your friend. You are alone. And that leaves us with Twyla. Who could she possibly represent? Oh. Twyla is there to see Mary. And no, I'm not going to make some joke about them being lovers. I've already done that enough on livestream. But Mary and I have to get going. We're at a date. Ugh, she's a bit freaky looking, ain't she? You get used to it. And don't talk about my girlfriend like that. You, me, bed, now. Although there is the fact that in Tricks and Treats, Mary is wearing a wedding dress, which does make me raise my eyebrows. Then again, they could just be a Halloween costume, or she ended up marrying Vasilis in this universe.
I'll die before I let you take away from me again!
Getting back on topic, the choice of cameos has to mean something. It can't just be fan service. There has to be a reason she's here. Though, why is Twyla taking a back seat in this universe? Well, since my timeline says the Blackout Hospital is after the events of Cemetery Mary, and considering all the stuff that Twyla did in Cemetery Mary, I don't know what she was thinking after the events of that game, but I imagine it was something like,
My God, what have I done?
Going by that, she probably felt so guilty about what transpired that in the Blackout Hospital universe, she decided to step away, letting someone else, Vasilis, to protect Mary. I mean, isn't it interesting that they both seem to know each other? Before we leave, let's talk about one intriguing detail of the true ending in Cemetery Mary. And it's in the mausoleum scene. Honestly, there's so much wrong with this scene that I can't cover everything in this video. Like, who is Twyla talking to? And why is the mausoleum like this to begin with?
I have no idea!
There's probably not a lot that I could speculate on that would be relevant to this video, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this scene was revisited in a later title. There's one small detail in this section that I overlooked every time I played this game. One that potentially connects Twyla to Death's World. I tried to get out, find anything that could help me. Wasn't any use. The corkboard didn't even have anything on it I understood. The computers were password.
Wait, what?
The corkboard didn't even have anything on it I understood. Mary can't read what's on the boards. Almost like it's in a language she can't understand. But what could that possibly be? There was a drawing on it, and it looked like some kind of writing underneath. The corkboard didn't even have anything on it I understood. Oh, Twyla can speak this language. Why else would it be here to begin with? Twyla is fighting a battle against Reginald to protect Mary. It all starts in Wishmaker, then it goes to Here for Sweethearts, and then in Cemetery Mary, she tries to stop Reginald by taking on a more villainous role. And you know what? She still fails in that regard. We don't know what transpired after the events of Here for Sweethearts, but Twyla failed to protect Mary in Wishmaker and in Cemetery Mary. When she gets to the Blackout Hospital universe, she feels so guilty about what happens that she takes a back seat and lets someone else protect Mary, that being Vasilis. And she comes to check up on Vasilis when Reginald is dead.
All's well that ends well, right?
Okay, so I'll admit, this theory isn't airtight and there's probably some flaws to it, but I made this theory because Cemetery Mary has a lot of moments that just don't add up, on top of some unanswered questions. On a quick note, I wouldn't be surprised if Twyla ends up being a playable character in a future title. If that does happen, maybe it would shed some light on her past actions. If you have any comments or objections to what I said, leave a comment down below.
Nothing left to say. No less words.